Hello, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. I need to do words already failing me. Great start. I need to update you as to the PhD situation. So, in my last video I did like a big wrap up of the first couple of months. This is going to be just the last month. And then hopefully we'll keep the future updates relatively short and sweet. So, while I do this, I'm also going to start working on my craft project, which I'm so desperate to finish, and that's why I'm at a table, but more importantly, and I'm going to hope that you're going to be okay with my fiddling with my cardigan, which I started making 18 months ago, something like that. I started making this before my trip to Korea for Christmas 2023. So I'm guessing I would have started this halfway through that year, roughly. It's like it's been a while. I haven't worked on it consistently, but it's been a lot of kerfuffle, and I just want to get it done. Hopefully in time to actually wear it this year, and the days are already getting longer. I'm running out of time, so I realise I'm already going quite off topic by explaining this, but what I'm doing, instead of weaving in the ends, of which there are thousands, I'm felting in the ends, and I'm hoping it's not going to make an awkward noise on the footage, but we'll just deal with it if it does. So, somewhere in my pockets I have tools of the trade. Now, crafting aside, we need to talk about the PhD. So, what have I been doing? Obviously, in the last month, there was Christmas, and the university shuts down for 2 weeks at Christmas, and fortunately, whilst they are forcing us to take time off, they don't deduct those 2 weeks from our annual leave. So I was quite happy about that, and we got to just run off. We were told not to work. Obviously several of my friends did. I considered doing some work, but in the end just went no, and I did nothing for 2 weeks. Partly because I realised that whilst my friends had had a summer holiday in, say, August, my summer holiday had been the previous December, January. So it had actually been ages since I'd had a holiday, and obviously since then I had like started a PhD and moved to the other side of the world, and I thought, you know what, I probably do need a few days off. And then that thought process was reinforced by me getting horribly sick. So a week before the shutdown for Christmas, actually the day that I was bulk filming and recording all the videos that you've seen in the last month, that day I was normal, and then ow, horrible pain in my side, and things got worse without going into details, and a few days later I had to go to the urgent care, which was free, and I very much appreciate it. I did have to wait for 5 hours to see a doctor, but it was entirely free, whereas in New Zealand it would be like maybe 2 hours, and then I would have to have paid, I don't know what it is these days, but I'm guessing about 80. So 5 hours for free, it was a long time to wait, but it wasn't, you know, the worst deal I've ever experienced. So anyway, went to the doctor, and they basically said, based on no actual testing, that what I was describing sounded like inflammation of the stomach lining caused by an infection, which they did not treat or actually test for, but they basically said that the stomach acid was irritating the inflammation, and basically it was propagating itself and getting worse and worse. So the doctor said that I had to continue eating even though I didn't feel like eating, so that there was a bit of material in the system to keep the system functioning, but also just to like protect my stomach, because obviously the acid would work on the food instead of the lining. And then I was basically given prescription antacids and sent on my way. So, in that week, I did my best, but I was really, really struggling. I was in so much pain, like I would say a 7 or 8 out of 10. And yeah, so that's kind of my only real lingering memory from that week. I know I tried to get stuff done. I don't know what I actually did. Both of my supervisors had taken that week off as well. They were available by email, but they went around anyway. So I did what I could, but I just let myself try and rest as much as I could. And then I took 2 weeks off, and I actually my mother came over for Christmas, so we had a hire car and we drove from where I'm living, which is not too far away from London, and we drove up to Glasgow, spent a couple of days in Glasgow, and then over to Inverness, and then down to down to York via Edinburgh. So we spent a night in Edinburgh, but we didn't really go into the city and do stuff. We just kind of drove through. So I definitely have to go back. And then we spent a couple of days in York, and then back down here so I could start uni. And so now, and then I got a cold. And so now, I've done a full week back at uni, in which I had a course to attend. So, whilst there are no classes which make up the assessed component of my PhD, I can take classes that the university offers just to like learn different skills and that kind of thing. So my first week back from Christmas, I spent a week sitting in on a course looking at the effects of climate change on catchments. So I did sit in on that course. That took a whole week. I don't have to do the assignment, which is good, because that would just be like an extra thing on my plate. And then at the end of that week, I had my regularly scheduled catch-ups with my supervisor, in which a month earlier they had asked me to get some work done. So other than that course, everything I have done for uni has been focused on just preparing for that meeting, because what they wanted me to do was look at what has been done by other scientists in my area, and then basically summarise what has been done and what data is available, because it's standard practice in the sciences to make your data publicly available for other scientists to use. So in theory, you could go onto a website called GenBank and you can find a publication where they've done whatever DNA sequencing, and you can actually directly download their raw data and play around with it. So we wanted to know what had been done, what data was available, that kind of thing. So what I have been doing, is like the main focus of my existence for the last month, has been first of all going on to Scopus, which is a literature research database, and trying to figure out what search terms I wanted to use that would get me as much information as possible, as many results as possible, whilst also being very, very specific. So that actually takes a bit of trial and error, like you might get some search terms that sound really good, but when you actually start to read through all of the papers that are resulting from that search, you might find a whole bunch of them are on something that's completely irrelevant. So my research is on streams and rivers, but I found that I have to put, in the search terms, I have to actively exclude urine stream and bloodstream, or I get a whole bunch of medical stuff. So my first step was to figure out what I wanted and what I didn't want and create those search terms. And then when I basically got it down to the right kind of papers within the right time frame and the right number of papers that I was looking for, so I could kind of tighten or broaden my search terms to kind of get the rough number of papers I wanted, then I had to start reading those papers. Now this isn't like a start to finish methodical read. This was like a quick open, check the abstract and methods, maybe skim through the introduction to double check stuff kind of read. So nothing too complicated, but still quite time consuming when you're dealing with 150 of them. And to read them you have to like press multiple buttons. So it's like, here's my search result, now I have to click this button to access the publication, and then I have to maybe click another couple of buttons to download it, and it's a whole big thing. So that was really time consuming. And then from that list, I had a spreadsheet where I downloaded the entirety of my search results, put it into a spreadsheet, and then I created a column in that spreadsheet where I was recording my comments on those papers. So for some of them, it might have just been like, oh, this is not a natural environment study. I was looking specifically for natural environments. Others I might have just put, yes, I downloaded it, depending on whether I was excluding it from what I was doing or continuing to keep it in the data set. And then I also had specific information that I was looking for. So I wanted to know what environmental variables people had been recording. So in my spreadsheet I added in columns for those variables, and I originally started off with no columns at all, and then as I encountered variables I created columns for them, and then in the next paper I read, if the same one was mentioned, I just filled in that one column with a binary, basically yes or no, did they mention this variable or not. I wasn't recording the actual data that they got, just whether or not they had the data. And my intention here was to see how many people had done what type of work within my area over what period of time and what geographical spread. And this took me weeks. Like I think I had started prior to getting sick, and then obviously I not very productive, but did my best to work on it whilst I was sick before Christmas, and then I started that course, and by that point I'd pretty much, when I had that 1 week to go but was also busy with courses, I pretty much got the data together, but then I had to figure out what to do with it. So I ended up creating a spreadsheet in which I summarised everything I'd done. So I recorded, or showed in the spreadsheet I should say, precisely what my search terms were, because these are things that you can obviously refine. And one little change to your search terms, like whether or not you've used, said S at the end of river, might dramatically change your outcomes. So knowing precisely what you wrote down is actually really important. So I showed the search terms I had used, the time period I was searching in, all of those search specific details, and how many papers I got as a result. And then I specified what I had been looking for when I manually read through all of those papers. So doing things like specifically looking for studies which were looking at the natural environment rather than laboratory experiments, that was specified. I also wrote down what terms I had come across which I could now see should have been in my search terms as exclusions, like mentions of the marine environment. I'm working in freshwater, so that wasn't something I initially excluded, but now I know to do so in the future. So I recorded all of that, and then the final number of papers that I ended up with after I'd gone through that process. And then, what did I do? I had summaries, just bar charts of how many papers used which of the different variables that had been measured. So like, 15 papers measured pH, 9 measured temperature, 1 mentioned turbidity. These are completely arbitrary numbers that are not reflective of real facts. These are just, random. So I made a chart for that. And then I also did one for, I had 3 bar charts. What were they? I can't remember now. I'm not going to go check my notes. There were 3 bar charts, environmental variables, something, and in the cases of studies which were looking at DNA sequencing, this is what it was, which gene regions they had looked at. So when you do identification of an organism by DNA, you do DNA barcoding. You don't sequence the entire species genome, you sequence just a tiny little fragment of it, and we call that the barcode. So it's just a very short fragment of the DNA which we know in that one region is going to be unique between species. So this is what a lot of these papers had done, and I wanted to see which genes they had looked at, because you look at different genes depending on what question you're asking. And then I had another chart which I now recall is a little bit more specific about my research. I haven't yet decided how much detail I want to give you on my actual research project, so we're going to leave that one vague. And basically it was a question about what kind of samples they had collected. And then I also mapped these sites. So I was looking at quite a range in terms of geographical spread. So I went on to, I think it's called My Map, so it's part of Google Maps. You can pull up a copy of Google Maps and you can drop in pins and search locations and put in labels and stuff and save it. So I used that to drop in colour-coded pinpoints for all of the sampling locations, and then I colour-coded them based on what type of questions they were trying to answer. So this way I could see what sort of data other people were collecting in order to answer what kind of questions and where the research was being done. This is particularly important because if I'm doing environmental research and let's say I have a question about water temperature and climate change. If I was to then get all the studies that have ever been written on water temperature and climate change in rivers, and I mapped them and I discovered that every single one of them was only with data from mountain ranges, that would be quite surprising. But that would immediately tell me, oh, I can do sampling and focus my study at lowland areas away from the mountains, and this will be really different from what's been done before. So that's basically what I was trying to achieve, and it had to be really methodical and organised like that with all of this precise search terms and graphing and things, because A, science, and B, well, I guess science again, but more specifically, if I then were to use this in a paper to justify what I'm doing or what have you, I need to be able to say precisely what I did. and that includes where I got my data, what search terms I used, how many papers I started off with, what kind of information I was recording. So that was really important for that. So I presented that to my supervisors. They seemed quite happy with my effort as well as the findings. So obviously we want those things. We don't want them to be like, well, the findings, you know, are useless because you did a shitty job, but we also don't want them to be like, you know, you put in all of this effort and that's really appreciated, but actually the findings are useless to us. Let's go back to the drawing board and decide on something else. Fortunately, that didn't happen. And as a consequence, from that work and the conversations we had about what I found, we now have a really good idea of what the first chapter in my thesis will be. And it's going to be huge and so much freaking work, but we have an idea, so hooray! So that was last week, and then this week I'm back in the classroom again. So last week I was doing a course on, as I said, like climate and catchment stuff. This week I'm doing more of the, it's very noisy, looking at, I think I mentioned before, there's specific like doctoral research skills courses that I'm required to take, and I have to do a week of that every year. That's this week. Fortunately it's not horrifically taxing. I don't have to do an assignment. This time around, because I've already done last year's week, obviously, the week that I did last year was a lot of group work involved, trying to be positive. This time there's none. There's a lot less group conversation because I think it's supposed to be a little less teaching us concepts that we then have to understand and discuss with other people, and it's more about like, here are some very practical skills that you are now expected to have based on the concepts we taught you last time, kind of thing. So that's this week. I think I've got those classes until Thursday afternoon. I've got a meeting on Friday. And then next week, I'm back in classes again. I think I'm doing hydrology, I think, next week. So water movement kind of work. I think from memory this one's going to involve going into computer labs and doing math that I don't know how to do. Looking forward to that. I'm not going to feel like an idiot at all. But that's fine. Like, it's actually fine. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what I'm up to. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that at the 4-month mark I have to hand in a package of documents that I've filled in for review. I'm working on that still. Part of that is being covered in the classes that I'm currently doing this week. So we've got classes on like how to fill in an ethics application, and I'm like, done. Like, I actually did that last year. And then you know, getting us to fill in plans and things all to do with research and data management, because a lot of us will be generating huge amounts of data, and like I said, you have to be able to share that data with people. So having a plan in place for how you're going to collect your data and how you're going to store it and make it available to people is all part and parcel of the whole thing. So that's what the courses this week are on. So yeah, that's what I've been up to and what's coming up. I'm feeling okay about the full month review, I think. I've got pretty much everything done. What I don't have done is relatively easy. There's no big difficult stuff left. So yeah. Anything else? I don't think so. I think that was my month. So unfortunately I don't have a lot of videos or anything from my trip to Scotland. If you are interested, there are a few uploads to Instagram, so there'll be links to that down in the description if you want to go check out some photos of like ruins next to Loch Ness and some old buildings and you know, stuff. So with that, I'm going to go and make some dinner, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, like and subscribe, yeah. I'm such a good YouTuber.